Hello and welcome to this video on global marketing. So we've been looking at when businesses wish to expand internationally, and we've talked about push factors and we've talked about pull factors. In this video, we're going to look at how a business might successfully do that and the different marketing approaches it might take. We can look at the term global localization, more commonly known as glocalization. Having a look at how we might alter the marketing mix as we enter new markets, and look at more broadly different approaches a business might take with its marketing when expanding internationally. And we call these domestic, mixed, or international, or the EPG model. Finally, we're going to relate this to Ansoff's matrix. So as we've seen before, a marketing strategy is a medium to long-term plan that a business creates in order to achieve specific marketing objectives. And the marketing strategy will include decisions on the 4 Ps, the business's marketing mix. Now, when the business decides to expand internationally, it must also consider what it's going to do to its marketing strategy. It could use a common global marketing strategy. So we basically just use what's worked in our own domestic market and roll it out into the new country. So a business doesn't differentiate its products or other elements of the marketing mix between countries. We have a consistent marketing strategy that we use for all countries. An example might be Swatch watches. These products are not altered. How they're marketed is not altered between different markets. A country, however, might use a localization strategy when it comes to its marketing. They might adapt their product or service to meet the specific requirements of the market that they are entering. Finally, a business might use what's known as a glocalization or a global localization strategy, where we try and maintain our global brand, but we do tailor our products slightly for the local market. An example might be Domino's Pizza. Fundamentally, the brand Domino's is the same in all markets. They call it Domino's. You can tell it's the Domino's. And fundamentally, most of the ingredients, the standard toppings are the same, but the menus are tailored slightly for each market. So for example, in Asia, it's more seafood and fish. In India, it's more curry flavored pizzas. So elements of the marketing mix may need to be adapted as we enter a new market, and the extent of the adaptation required will depend upon the product and the country itself. We might want to consider things like cultural differences, differences in taste, languages, unintended meanings, and so on. So for example, the Kentucky Fried Chicken slogan, "Finger licking good," when it was translated into Chinese, came out as "Eat your fingers off." When the Schweppes tonic water was released into Italy, a campaign translated the name literally into Schweppes toilet water. So you have to be aware of these things. And so there's often a trade-off here. We can't really still have the same KFC brand in this situation. So we lose some of that global appeal, that global sort of trademark and slogan when we go for a more localized approach. But obviously in that situation, we have to do it. Another way of thinking of this is through the EPG model. Now the E here stands for ethnocentric, and this is where we have an approach to international markets the same as our domestic approach. At the other end of the scale, we have known as a polycentric approach. Poly meaning many. We have a very international approach, and we have different names even, or different types of products in each particular market. Or we have something a little bit in between, which we call a geocentric or mixed approach. We still try and maintain our global brand, but we tailor the products slightly for the market that we're operating in. So let's go through these in turn. So an ethnocentric approach is similar to having just one global marketing strategy. So the marketing mix is very similar across all countries. We have a standardized product. We have highly centralized structure and decision making. So an example might be Rolls-Royce. The way in which they're marketed, the products are very similar across all countries. They're trying to say the same sort of thing, and the brand name is very important. Again, Apple would be another good example. The products are the same in all the different markets in the way in which they're promoted and sold. So the advantages, we have lower costs here. We don't have to develop different variations of the same product. We can benefit from economies of scale. We can have tight control over the branding and the message that we're sending. Disadvantages, well, we're not really taking account of the national culture or any differences. We're kind of hoping that the market will be open to our products. We won't be able to take into account any local managers' expertise. Decision making can be slow. Possibly there might be diseconomies of scale. A polycentric or international approach is very much a localization process. We very carefully adapt our marketing mix for each different market. Decision making is decentralized. We leave local managers in charge. And often we almost treat the local businesses as a separate entity. A good example might be Nestle. This is an example of all the different brands they have operating in many different markets. And so what's known as one product in one market, we have a completely different product with a different name, different brand in another market. There's not many products that sell across various different markets. An advantage of this, where we can very much target our marketing mix for the local audience to increase revenues. We can use local managers' expertise, and they can respond quickly to local market changes. Separating different parts of the business into different sections can minimize diseconomies of scale. On the flip side, we perhaps have high development costs. You have to develop a different product for each particular market. It fails to exploit any benefits of having a global brand name. It might be difficult to compete with established local brands, and price differences can create the risk of reselling from one market into another via eBay. If we're offering something very cheaply in one market, people might then sell it into another market where we're trying to use a more premium price. A very common approach is a geocentric approach, and this is really our globalization approach. So their marketing mix is adapted somewhat to local conditions, but the business seeks to gain benefits from a global integrated scale of operations and a global brand name. So good examples of this might be McDonald's. If you go to McDonald's anywhere in the world, you can very much tell it's a McDonald's. They try and source ingredients on a large scale, but they will try and tailor the menu so that it suits the local market. For example, this burger here in Germany that includes sausages. So the advantage of a globalization approach, sales may be increased because we tailor our products slightly to local market conditions while still exploiting the benefit we get from being a global brand. We can achieve some economies of scale. Some control is retained, but we also allow some local managers to have an input. So it's a bit of a best of both scenario. In terms of disadvantages, well, there are some costs associated with acting local. We have to find out about the local market. Can the business compete effectively with domestic competition or with other multinational businesses that have very much a localized approach? Is there tension between the center and the regions when making key decisions? That's a good question we need to ask. So finally, let's look at this and how it relates to Ansoff's matrix. We've looked at this previously, that when entering new markets, we could consider market development or product development. Or we could actually consider a diversification approach. But when we consider market development, we have to think very carefully about the marketing strategy that we use. Are we going to use an ethnocentric, polycentric, or a geocentric approach to the marketing mix as we enter a new market? Perhaps if we go for product development approach, again, we have to consider, is this going to be a polycentric approach or perhaps a geocentric approach? We might also consider this always in terms of how it matches to the marketing mix in our own country. So business using any of these strategies may wish to review their approach using the EPG model. Should they switch from an ethnocentric approach, such as one marketing mix, one global brand and product, to a geocentric approach? How might this impact their costs? How might this impact their revenue? What is the risk of doing this? So in this video, we've looked at the term globalization. We've looked at how this might impact upon the marketing mix a business might adopt as it enters new markets. We've gone through the EPG model and looked at some of the benefits of costs of those different approaches. Finally, we related this all to the Ansoff's matrix. That's it. Thanks very much for listening.